I loved my pa. He was my hero. I wanted to be just like him. I was definitely a daddy's girl. And when I was little, he would hold me in his lap, and I would try to match my breathing to his, slow, my quicker respiration to his slow, deep breaths, nearly suffocating myself every time. Or sometimes he would lie on the ground on his stomach to watch TV, and he'd prop his chin in his hands while he watched, and I would crawl on his back, and I would prop my chin on his head and watch with him. We're a lot alike. I walk like him, much to my mother's horror, and I tell jokes like him. Many of our mannerisms and inflections are so much alike that you wouldn't know that we're not genetically related. As an adopted kid, I often think of Jesus also being adopted. Long before God spoke at Jesus' baptism saying, "This is my son whom I love, with you I am well pleased." Joseph, Mary's husband, was Jesus' adopted dad. What must that have been like? Parenting the Son of God. I wonder if Jesus ever crawled up into Joseph's lap and tried to match his breaths to Joseph's. I wonder, did he pick up Joseph's way of resting his chin in his hands when he thought, or in the way he carried himself? Now, Joseph, he was a craftsman, and craftsmen are this interesting mix of practicality and artistry and intention. And Jesus followed in his father's footsteps. He became a craftsman as well. And I can imagine him watching Joseph work and learning the trade by mimicking Joseph's movements, just as I used to mimic my own dad's. It certainly had an impact on Jesus' teaching. Jesus often used metaphors that had stone or wood in them. And I wondered, did those metaphors conjure up for Jesus, memories of learning? Did they conjure up the feel of the tools or the grit of stone, the smell of sawdust? Could he still see the way Joseph moved at work? Could he still hear his careful instruction? We don't know much about Joseph. He shows up twice in the Gospels, and nothing he ever said was recorded. It's really easy to ignore someone who is that quiet. In the book of Matthew, God speaks to Joseph 4 times in 4 dreams. And each time, Joseph doesn't respond with words, but acts in obedience. Joseph was a man who listened. And even more than hearing his father or learning his father's trade, I think Joseph's influence on Jesus can be seen there in the listening. The Gospels often tell of Jesus drawing away to pray, to be alone with God, I think to listen. Because there are several instances where Jesus says something to the effect of, "I do what the Father tells me," or "I say what the Father has told me," or "I do nothing except for what the Father has shown me." Jesus listens and he obeys his Heavenly Father, at least in part, because his earthly father did.